Hello and welcome to Household Filmmaking. I'm your host, Christopher, and today I am very pleased to bring quite an established actor to the show. He has a lot to talk about in terms of his career as an actor, as well as his roles on, we can't talk about Star Trek Picard yet, but CW's Legacies, Teen Wolf, and even Hellboy and Annabelle Comes Home. Welcome to the show, Doug. Thanks for being on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, I'm very curious because you're a California native. You grew up right by Hollywood. Was acting something that you always wanted to do, or was it something that you just kind of fell into due to proximity?
I always wanted to do it without really knowing, that it's a career, but I definitely was fascinated by movies as a kid, and I think that Halloween was my acting thing because I would get so into Halloween months before, planning my costume and really like performing it to perfect it for Halloween. So I think that not really thinking of it as a career, it was definitely something that I enjoyed just from the excitement of playing characters.
And you kind of fell into, I think you started with extra work, and maybe I think you also did a little bit of work at Universal Studios. But am I correct? Did we see you at the beginning of the original Blade movie?
Yeah, exactly. I started in high school actually doing extra work, which I went to with your wife, which is crazy. But I started doing extra work in high school and taking classes and things like that, and then got out of high school. I also was my job in high school was at Universal Studios, playing Frankenstein and Harry and performing in shows. And then I continued that out of high school, and yes, I got cast as a vampire in the bloodbath scene in Blade, which is wild because they're bringing that back and stuff, and that scene is pretty iconic. You could see me in it.
It really is. It's quite a cool scene too. I mean, first of all, the experience of being showered in blood has to be singular,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
also you. Oh, guys, I'm blocking on his name all of a sudden. The director.
Yeah.
Who I like his work quite a bit, and suddenly I can't. It's not coming to me. But anyway, he. Oh man, that's in the middle of my show.
We're talking about the director of Blade.
The director of Blade, yeah.
I didn't even think he's worked since then.
No, he did League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and he does a lot of behind the scenes stuff now. But it's funnily enough, he works with my friend Alec Gillis at Studio ADI. He's there all the time, and I think he's actually a brilliant guy, and I suddenly can't think of his name.
Yeah, but I forget his name too, but I love Alec and Tom. They're amazing.
Yeah, they're great guys, and I'll ask you later on about your experiences with them because I'm sure you've had opportunities to work with them too. But in terms of first getting into Hollywood, was it just like a matter of getting your foot in the door, doing little stuff like that, or do you find that it was there was no door open, you just kind of have to keep working on your craft, and what did you do to kind of get yourself more and more in there?
Yeah, it wasn't easy. It was definitely, there wasn't really doors open. It was just constantly trying, and looking back, I feel like I didn't really know what I was doing. Even though I was in LA, I didn't know anybody in the business. I didn't have family in the business, so it was definitely a struggle. And the extra work was more just to make money and get some experience on set. But it's definitely not something that you want to continue doing if you're pursuing acting, because it's not really looked great upon if you're an actor, and people get comfortable with it, and it doesn't really do much for you. It's a great starting, but it's not something you want to continue. But yeah, it was just I was taking class, I was auditioning. I at the time I found a niche doing basketball commercials because I was a basketball player. So I made a pretty good living for somebody, my age, making money doing basketball commercials. But really my goal was to just be an actor playing all kinds of different characters. I never ever considered, acting in makeup or anything. It wasn't a thought. I've never really noticed that in movies as something that somebody did. So yeah, it was just constantly trying, sending stuff out on Backstage West, taking class, all that stuff, trying to move forward in this career.
It's funny too, you mentioned that. I think one of the most consistent things I've heard in the industry is how easy it is to become pigeonholed, to say, oh, you're a specialist, you specialize in, oh, you do this, therefore we can't hire you for this, or they're not willing to give you a try. So, and I've seen many people fall into years of extra work where they're still like 30 years down the road, they're still going, hey, this new movie's coming out, watch for me in the background when this building is collapsing and I'm running. And it's like, man, that's a hell of a thing to get stuck into, especially if you really want to progress.
Well, you won't progress if you do that. And there's a whole documentary on background actors. It's pretty hilarious to watch it because the people in it are actually talking about, oh, you could see me in this scene and I was in this movie with this person, and then they show a clip and it's literally so pixelated so far you can't even make the person out, and it's sad almost. It's not a career as an actor, that's for sure.
I've actually heard that there are prima donnas in background acting, which
It is. It's the SAG people that have been doing it a while, that have their own chairs and they have everything they need on set and their laptop, and it's a funny thing, and they look down at the non-union, and it's weird. It's such a weird hierarchy when you think of it. It's the lowest person on the totem pole, even lower than a PA is a background person. You're basically a prop, and you're replaceable. You're so replaceable, so it's funny.
Now, I want to ask you a little bit about the actual craft of acting, because every actor has their method, or the thing that works for them. When it comes to becoming a character, where do you come from? Are you trained? Did you take acting classes that kind of trained you in the standard methods, or have you come up with your own way of doing things?
Well, I've taken a lot of classes over the years, and I'm actually still in class, which is, something that I take pride in, continually, perfecting what I do, because it's I feel like as an artist, you never stop getting better, and if you're not continually searching to get better, then you can remain stagnant. And a lot of people that I know that are working or not working, that have been around, they don't continue their classes. And I don't understand that. But what I've come to, and how I approach things is I immediately read a script or a character. I immediately tell myself that I'm that person. So there's no, oh, I'm an actor and I'm doing this and I'm playing this character. No, I am this character. And what I do is I start visualizing, and the more time I have, the better, like all the situations in the script or the scene, and I try to imagine myself going through those things, because when you go through something in life, your mind can just immediately knows about it, and it goes there, and you don't have to think about it. And when you're acting, if you don't know what you're saying, as far as like if you're talking about something, then you're kind of like a lot of times line reading and faking it. But if you take that imagination and really sit with it and really believe that you went through that thing, to make it as real as possible, when you start speaking it just flows better. So that's kind of my process. It's just immediately telling myself and believing that I am this person, no matter who he is.
That's really cool. So essentially, you're saying that you're immersing yourself in the attitudes and imagining the situation and letting that inform how you act it out in front of the camera.
Yes, and it's like there's a lot of people that like they break down the scene and they take all these notes and they say, oh, I'm gonna at this point I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that, and I feel like that's the worst thing you could do, to plan what's gonna happen. And what I try to do is I try to just be so open to whatever happens in the moment that it can change at any moment. Like I could be doing it one way and then next time it could go a different way. And I feel that's the best acting, because you're not planning out what's going to happen and doing it the same way every time. It's just like you're open to discoveries. And from what I've seen in the actors I like, I feel like they are so off the cuff that it feels so real, where it's not acting, it's just being a human being. And that's what I try to strive to do with my work.
Do you rehearse your lines a lot? Do you spend a lot of time kind of maybe in a room by yourself, just kind of acting it out just to kind of get a feel for it? Or
well, I rehearse going over it, but I don't rehearse like out loud, and I don't rehearse how I'm going to say it. My rehearsing is more trying to memorize the lines and doing it in a way where I'm not memorizing them how I'm going to say them. It's just memorizing them so that I know them. And then when I speak them, there's no planned way of saying it. It's just, I know the lines. I've sat with what I'm going to say. I sat with this person, his experiences. I've really tried as much as I can to really believe these situations that I've gone through. And a lot of it is made up, stuff that's happened. It's made up in my imagination, but it doesn't matter to the audience, because as long as I know them and I see them, the audience will see them. So when I do the scene and I'm listening to the other person, whatever comes out happens in an unplanned way. And when I get to that point, I think that people can see that it, feel that it's real. And that's what we're going for, is like a real conversation, not something that feels like acting, because there's so much acting that you see, like, the great actors don't, but, like, I see so much in indie films where it's like, oh man, they're really acting, and I don't want to be acting. I want to be believable as a person, a human being.
It's funny because this kind of relates to something that I was just listening to an interview with David Harbour, who is in Stranger Things and, of course, in Hellboy with you. I don't know how much of an opportunity you got to have any kind of one-on-one interaction with him in terms of character, but he was saying something that was similar to what you're saying, in that he said he doesn't try and think of situations that he's been through and relate them to his acting, because then he's too hung up on remembering that situation, and that it didn't really help him draw emotion from that. Whereas, he just he didn't need that. He just needed to imagine being in that moment. So it sounds very similar to what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with him. I was with him for 3 months. We talked, but we didn't get personal or anything. And when I was in scenes with him, I was blown away. I thought he was freaking amazing, but I didn't know that was his process, but it makes sense. And that's exactly what I wouldn't do, what he said. Try to think of past experiences, because when you're thinking of past experiences, it takes you away from what you're doing in the scene, and the past experience will never relate to the scene. It will never be perfect to that character. There might be hints of it, but it's never going to be exactly, like, for instance, if my mom was a certain way and she did this or that, maybe there'd be similarities, but it wouldn't be exactly like the character. and it also takes you out of the scene. So I just don't like that approach, and I agree with that with him. If you could really imagine, your imagination is powerful, and the more you practice it, the better it gets. So yeah, that's great to hear that about him, because I think he's amazing.
Well, I mean, my family they're all Stranger Things fanatics here, so it's great to watch a performance and then hear where an actor is coming from. I've tried a little bit of acting myself, but as a filmmaker, going like, well, maybe, and I do very low budget stuff, so it's usually, hey, maybe I can save myself a few bucks by just writing this role for me. And
I get it.
but I've done a little bit of acting, and I thought I did all right, but I definitely noticed the difference between my performance and someone who is a professional actor. My biggest problem is I write my own lines, then I memorize them, and then I'm analyzing the lines as I'm saying them, and that is it's the most distracting thing, because you're trying to remember the lines as you're saying them, and you're trying to make them sound authentic. And this is essentially that comes from the fact that I'm just not disciplined as an actor. Discipline comes from constant training and practice. And I often find, especially now that I'm, when I cast my movie in Texas, it was incredibly hard to find good actors. I eventually did, but the biggest problem was, A, there's not enough people that have the type you're looking for, which is just a logistical problem. But B, you are inundated by people who want to audition, and you see right off the bat, they're just like, oh, I just thought I'd give it a try, because they think it's...
Yeah.
Because good actors make it look easy, but then, it's not easy. And so you just get a lot of horrible auditions.
No, and I know, and that's the most frustrating thing to me, because I have a lot of people that write me on a weekly basis about, oh man, I want to be an actor. That's so cool what you're doing, and they just want to like jump in like it's that easy. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do it on the side, and I want to, and it's almost like a slap in the face to say that, and I know they don't realize that, but. I've been doing this for 25 years, and it doesn't work that way. It's an art, and it takes years to hone. And I haven't even honed it yet. Even though I've had success, I still feel like I have a long way to go. And for somebody to say, yeah, I want to try it out. I want to be doing the movies you're doing, and they have no experience. They've never done a thing. People think that they could just jump into it because you're just saying words, and it's so much more than that. And it's a reality check. That's why so many people quit, because it's not easy like that.
Oh no,
you gotta put the work in.
It's actually amazing, because you're essentially going for something that even people who are talented, who have practice, still don't make a connection. There's still something about what they're doing that's just not...
It's not right. Yeah, it's not real. Like I know people at 20 years in that you watch their work and you're like, this guy's been doing it this long? It's terrible. And it's kind of mind-boggling why you think, well, why isn't he at a better place? And it's just like some people just don't get it. They don't put the work in. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Absolutely.
Yeah, you can be. There was a cartoon that always made me laugh. There was some talent show where there was a pirate judging, and he said, it be technically sound, but where be the heart?" And
that's funny.
it just cracked me up, because I've seen people who are not just actors, but writers, artists, filmmakers. They have everything right technically, but they're still not hitting that mark. So to expect that you can just jump in. Yeah. And then, of course, there's those frustrating incidents where you do see someone just jump in and it just hits right away, and you're like, how did that happen?
No, I know. And those are very few and far between. And what you're saying is because it's not a science. It's an art. you could read every book in the world about acting or filmmaking, but that doesn't make you a filmmaker or an actor. You know, there's creativity and stuff doesn't come from a book. You know, you can follow each step and it's technical, but it's still not, you don't feel it. You know what I mean? Like, it's got to come from a different place. It's crazy. It's hard to explain. It's hard to capture that magic because it's not a science.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I can vouch through, as a writer, I'm very interested in psychology. And one of the things that is pretty much constantly agreed on in psychology is not everyone's creative. It's not, it is something that you're born with, just like some people are born, you know, with the right bone structure to be a runway model, and what some people are you know, just bigger and beefier and stronger genetically. It's something that some people have and some people don't. So there's a lot of people who kind of come in and go like, "Oh, I'm creative too," and you look and you go, not really, you know. But
or there's people that have that bone structure that get all this attention and go, "I'm moving to Hollywood to be an actress because everybody loves me," and then they find out very quickly that it doesn't have anything to do with that.
Well, the funny thing here, it's a phenomena here in Texas. You get you know, because there's an independent film community out here, I would call it. It's, you know, Austin is trying to be like a little Hollywood, and you know, at the moment, I believe you're in Atlanta, right? At the moment,
right now, I don't live here.
Yeah, but you're on a job in Atlanta, so you know, there's a lot going on there. But what happens is you see these. There was one person I was ready to cast in my film here in Texas, and she was just like, "Hey, I'm doing good. I'm heading out to Hollywood." And I looked at her reel and I thought, you know, like, yeah, you're good, like definitely good enough that I wanted to cast her in my film. But at the same time, I was like, you are essentially the best of the best are all congregating in Hollywood to try and get that prize, and the playing field is going to be a lot more leveled there than it was here in Texas for that particular actress. So, and I haven't heard anything from her since. So, but I mean, you know, she may be working. I don't know. It's just one of those situations where there's a big fish in a little pond syndrome. And then there's no, I mean, Hollywood is essentially an ocean of talent. So
I know, and I tell people that because I work all over, and people go, "Yeah, I'm thinking of moving," and I'm just like, they're doing well where they're at. I'm like, why are you moving? Just stay here. You're working, and it's like I don't want to ruin their dream of doing that, but I'm like, you know, you're in a good spot. Don't do that. And it's funny you mentioned the whole Texas thing. I just shot like this thing where they hired a local in Texas for this guy's movie because they shot there, and the performance was so bad for this character that he just used his like movement and shadows and replaced me on a green screen as the character for the entire movie. I literally shot it a whole day or two doing all of the dialogue that he cast this big guy there that was like a former football player.
Oh, wow.
Hilarious.
Yeah, it is a difficult thing. I kept my cast small, fortunately, for my movie, and it was definitely an eye opener, having lived and worked in Hollywood, coming to Texas and doing things like presenting my cast and crew with script breakdowns, shot lists, and storyboards, and having them all look dumbfounded because I had all this prepared for them and they didn't know what to do with it. And I was like, well, are these okay? What are they up to standards? What was the last story? And they're like, we never get anything like this. I kind of had to teach them all what the storyboards were meant to help them with. So it was, it's very interesting. And also going to what you were saying about, staying put if you have some success. My friend Bill Oberst Jr., who's done a lot of horror movies, he doesn't.
know that name. I know that name.
Yeah, he's done a lot of stuff. He was on Criminal Minds for playing a serial killer. He's a reoccurring serial killer. I guess they haven't caught him yet. And he's in Rob Zombie's new 3 from Hell. But he does a lot of little indie movies, and he's usually playing some sort of crazy person, which is the sweetest guy in real life. But
totally. Got a creepy look to him.
What's that?
He's got a creepy look to him. I know exactly who he is.
Yeah, and he's got a whole story about how he learned to use that creepy look to his advantage. But he said, he's like, I didn't even go to Los Angeles anymore. He's like, I could have an office there. He's like, I don't need it. He's like, he's back in New York where he's from, and he auditions over the internet most of the time, or these days he just gets calls from people who know his work and think he would be good. So he does a lot of theater. He does a lot of playing bad guys in cheap horror movies, and he's found his niche, and he's very happy. And again, he's good enough where people come to him. So I figure if you're in a smaller location where you're having success, just keep at it. And if it's meant to be that you're going to become that bigger actor, I think for the most part, people will find you.
Oh, absolutely. Like, it's funny because I've been around a while, and even traveling here, I know people and people know me, and it's just such a small world. And the more you're around and the more you do it, you're going to eventually, break through. But it's just, you got to stick with it, and you got to go through the grind and the struggle and put the work in. And that's what a lot of people don't do. So, it's cool once you get to that point where you start to make some momentum and do stuff. Because if you're passionate about it, that passion never dies. So it's exciting.
So one of the things that I also kind of want to call back to, because this is something that applies to both you and Bill Oberst Jr. in different ways, is he has a story where he said he kept trying to get what he called the soccer dad commercial parts, and a casting director, he called it his peanut butter days, where he's just surviving on peanut butter. He said a casting director came to him and said, "You're not the soccer dad. You're the guy that kills and eats the soccer family." And he just, it was kind of like, instead of being insulted, it was a revelation to him. And that was how he started finding success. But, the downside to that is, from here on out, he's pretty much always cast as the maniac or the creepy guy. And you have spent a lot of time in makeup, a lot of time. You're the Sasquatch in the beef jerky commercials. Am I?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is something that it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's always great to have people know you as somebody who can wear that makeup or put on that costume and not complain and be physical. But at the same time, you kind of have to prove yourself all over again as an actor, don't you?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like I was saying, that I never thought of it as anything of a career to do it. I enjoyed it at Universal. I enjoyed it. I started to get, people that recommended me back then because they say, "Oh, Doug's tall and he's good at makeup," and then it led to other things. And then, when you're struggling as an actor, and then I started to get people requesting me for stuff. And, I did Freddy vs. Jason. I played Jason in the end. And I was like, wow, this is iconic. And they actually wanted me for this. And then I did Sathura, which Jon Favreau directed. And then at a certain point, I had kids and I had a house and I'm struggling to pay the bills. And I'm like, man, people are actually seeking me out for these things. I got to really focus on this. And then I started to focus on, getting better at playing these characters, and, going to Monsterpalooza was huge, and meeting all these makeup artists. And then it became a thing, but then it kind of put the regular acting on the back burner. Just because, I wasn't working a lot, I wasn't making a lot of money. And now getting back to the work of the acting, now that I've, kind of succeeded in this certain niche, which I always see it as acting, even though it may not be, as a human all the time. It has kind of, pigeonholed me in a way where people are casting me in this, and then I have to really make an effort to say, hey, man, I'm an actor. I'm doing other stuff too, and a lot of them don't know that. So I think it's different than Bill, though, because, he has a certain look that casts him in that way. And since I've been in makeup, it's not like I haven't shown what I could do on the outside. I started in a movie this last year with Richard Grieco, and I was playing a SWAT guy. So I've done a few things like that in this past year consciously to take these indie films just to show my acting, and that's what I'm starting to do, being in class and everything. And things are starting to do more out of it. But the fact is, I get on these movies like a Hellboy or an Annabelle or The Show, where it kind of takes me out of the game for several months, which is great in a way. But at the same time, it's not my ultimate goal, So I look at it as a blessing in one sense, because it's paying the bills, and I'm not struggling. But at the same time, eventually I will break through and do what I really want to do.
Well, I imagine it's kind of a balance. It's like anything, sometimes people in the industry actors have to get that job working at the restaurant or, bartending or whatever it is. But at the same time, it gives them the flexibility to go on auditions. And I would imagine that it's kind of being in the suit or being in the makeup and playing a creature. In a way, it's kind of like the blue collar aspect of acting. I've always kind of imagined the effects departments as like the blue collar aspect of making movies, because it's very physical. It's very, it's even more so making sure that the shot is exactly what they need, because there's more technical aspects of framing that monster or that creature, and making sure that whatever animatronics are behind it are working in tandem with your moves. And so it's which is something I would like to talk to you about more in my other show, The Practical People, which we'll do in part 2 of this interview. But at the same time, I mean, I imagine it's a cool kind of like paying the bills thing that, you can continue to make more connections and work with people and put your acting work in front of them and have them give you a chance that way.
Well, that's exactly. And that's one of the things that I'm doing is, I'm opening doors of meeting people that I probably would never get to. And, like creators of shows and big producers and things where, as an actor not being known or a celebrity, I'm working side by side by them. So I'm using that to, let them know, hey, I work as an actor too. And I wouldn't get that opportunity. And eventually I know it will pay off. But at the same time, it's exactly what you said. It's kind of like it's not looked at. Even though they're seeking me out for my experience, I'm still not looked at as the same as the regular cast. And that's what is frustrating. It's like I'm putting all this in and I have all this experience and I'm bringing this character to life. It's making you, everyone love that, like to sell it. But yet at the same time, it's not like, when it comes down to, if I was the guest star out of makeup or the reoccurring out of makeup, I would be looked at even, a little bit higher than that, so that's what's frustrating.
And you say you've had this conversation with other actors who do makeup. You know Doug Jones?
Well, that's who I've had this conversation with a lot. Now, he's broken through, which is, he's different now, but he went through all of this in the past that I'm going through. So he's, obviously with Guillermo and them winning the Academy Award. for Shape of Water and him getting that attention, and then Pan's Labyrinth, and now on Star Trek. He's broken through that, but he's absolutely went through this where he's the main guy in the movie in makeup, and they don't invite him to the premiere, and that happened in the past.
What do you say to the people who are kind of a little more flippant about it? Like, what does it matter if you just, you're getting a paycheck, blah, blah, blah. Why did, if you have success with being in the suit or the makeup, why does it matter so much? Are you just fostering some ego or something like that? I mean, I hear these kind of flippant things, and it's very frustrating to me.
I'll tell you that that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, because it's not about the money. It's 100% about the credit. The credit is everything. If I can't say that I played that character, if it's not on IMDb and it's not in the credits, then those are the stepping stones that can take you to that next level. If I'm not credited, and people think I'm a liar, but you use that as a stepping stone to get to the next thing. So it's so important. I'm not making the movie for the money. Yes, I need to get paid. I'm making that movie and, struggling through it so that I can have that credit to get that next job, to, show the producer that, hey, he's in this movie. So it absolutely means everything to an actor.
And it also shows that, and this is, my thing, because like I said, I get frustrated by hearing this attitude by people who are just acting like it's all for a paycheck and, be happy with that. But yeah, this is an art form, filmmaking in general, not just acting, but, the people like us care about elevating and being a part of, having that sense that it matters to us as creators and artists, and it matters to the audience who is really hoping every time they sit down in that seat to be entertained in a way that stays with them, because unfortunately with so much out there at the moment, so much of it is forgettable. So to create something that does endear itself to people, that I consider that the real success.
Well, yeah, and also, I'm at a point now where if they're not going to be credit me the character that I'm going to be playing, bringing this character to life, then I won't do it. I'll turn it down. I literally won't do it, no matter what it is now, because that's the most important thing. And if people don't understand that, then I don't want to be working with them. If a producer says, "Oh, come on, why did you want to be credited that?" We're going to, then I don't want to work on the movie, because it is important to me.
I'm reminded of it's a story I heard about when they were trying to find the director for the original Alien, and they asked somebody, "What are you going to do for the face hugger?" And it's like, "Oh, no, it's easy. I'll just get a liver from the butcher shop and slap it on the guy's face." And they're just like, okay, no, not this guy. Because it's that flippant attitude. It really is the difference between quality and schlock. And people, it may not be what you intend, but I think audiences sense sincerity in a person's work. So if the person cares, then that resonates with the film. So which actually brings me to my next point, because obviously this stuff matters to you, because you've tried to produce, you successfully produced, acted in, and directed your own what I believe it was a TV series pilot, The Haunt, right?
Yeah.
So can you tell me a bit about that? Because it kind of relates to your early days of, like playing Frankenstein.
It absolutely does, and that's where it actually comes from. I worked at Universal for 10 years, starting in high school, and I also did the Halloween Horror Nights years ago. And there's a lot of funny situations that happen. And over the years, I was like, man, it would be really funny. At first, it started as a movie idea. Wow, this would be really great, a movie like this. I've never seen anything about a comedy about people working at a small-time haunted house out in the Midwest, and the funny situations that I've seen, and the wacky characters and the wacky people playing these characters, you know, who are a little off, some of them, and then as it kind of went on, and like the TV world, how much TV stuff there is, I said, man, my wife said, you know, this would be a great pilot. I said, absolutely, we could just go all over the place with this. So we wrote the script, and it's like an Office meets Waiting for Guffman. These small town folks that live and die for this, working at this haunted house. It's basically their life, even though some of them have side jobs and things. They come together, and it's their passion, and a lot of silly stuff happens, and there's wacky characters we all know and love that work at this haunted house. And we shot the first episode, and I've been so busy that I haven't pushed it, but it's definitely on my list of things to try to get made as a TV series. Whether it's, I mean, I wouldn't be my first goal to be a web series, but you know, I'd love to get it on some sort of a streaming service, and yeah, that's basically it.
So what was it like producing that, you know, raising the money and you know, selling people on the idea, or was it just something that you put together with resources that you had at hand? You know,
well, we had a lot of, you know, talent is easy because I have all the friends and I know the talent. The makeup, I wanted simple. I didn't want too crazy. I wanted it to actually look a little silly. So I used a lot of friends that made stuff for me for that. You know, basically it was funded by me and my wife. So we paid for it. And, you know, you obviously have to pay crew, because it's not like an actor who will work for free and stuff. So we self-financed it, and, you know, we had some great resources to use, like a person who builds haunted houses had stuff at his house, so we used that. And obviously with more money, we'll get more into the haunted house and things, which takes more production, you know, and more money and things. But yeah, we just used our resources basically.
I think it's fantastic, especially again out here in Texas, and Oklahoma's right above us. There's a huge, thriving Halloween haunt. What would you call it? A scene out here, I guess.
Oh yeah,
it's
all over, man. And I know these people, and I know how much they love it. And the show that I wrote is like the Midwest, because in the Midwest they have year-round haunts. So it's not just for Halloween.
Oh yeah,
this thing's year-round. Obviously, Halloween we make it even a bigger production. And you know, Christmas we changed it to Krampus. I mean, it's so many. Like The Office is a phenomenal show, but if you think of an office, it's pretty boring. So imagine the same premise in this world that we all love of Halloween and haunted houses, and I just think it's such a good idea, and it checks all the boxes. And I didn't want to fund anymore. I basically did it as instead of showing a script of, hey, this is where I want to go with this. And now I just need to seek a network or a streaming service to try to fund it, and it could be shot on a pretty low budget, I think.
Yeah, these days this is something that filmmakers talk about all the time. I mean, I have a pocket 4K cinema camera that's around $1,300. I mean, that's telling somebody that they could shoot cinema quality footage for that little money. Just, you know, we live in that age, so yeah, I find it very exciting. Well,
yeah, and it takes place in one location. You rent a warehouse out and you build the sets, and that's basically it. You know, so I really want to make it happen. It's something that I still hear work on every now and then, but I just haven't been out there, you know, pitching it like I need to be. That's the goal.
Well, I've seen the trailer, and I'll try and link the trailer in the description for this video, so people can check that out. But I think the characters they feel very endearing. I think that's one of the great things about it. It's not just the kind of silliness of what can go on in comedy situations, but you know, they seem like odd but very likable people are going to be on the
that's
show.
what we wanted. That was one of the main things, was to make them likable, because I feel like if characters are likable in comedy, you know, you do you invest more in it. If they're not likable, they don't have the heart, and it's a little tough. But yeah, the likability and with the silliness, you know, I think it's a great thing with Halloween in the backdrop. Something I love. I love haunted houses. I always have since I was a kid, and I know the crowd that follows me loves it too. So,
well, it sounds excellent. Well, I want to say thank you for being on this segment of the show. And if unless you have anything else you'd like to add, I would like to move us to part 2 over on the practical people and talk about your work with working in special effects as an actor.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so if you're listening, please head on over to part 2, which will probably be up maybe the following day from this episode of The Practical People.